Hi, I'm Billy. I'm 24, born and raised just outside of Alabama, Auburn. Life here is pretty ordinary. Rain, coffee shops, and lots of green. I'm in my third year of college, working toward a business degree that I'm still not sure I even want. I live in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a roommate who practically lives at his girlfriend's place. So I mostly have the place to myself. To pay rent and buy groceries, I work as a delivery driver for a local pizza place. It's not glamorous, but it pays enough, and honestly, I don't mind the simplicity of the job. Drive, deliver, repeat. No pressure, no drama. That day started just like any other. I had a full stack of orders and a mild headache from staying up too late, binge-watching some crime documentary series. I grabbed my car keys, threw on my faded hoodie, and headed out into the gray drizzle. The first few deliveries were routine. A family with noisy kids, a couple of teenagers who barely said thanks, a guy who gave me a suspiciously generous tip. Then came the last order of my shift, large pepperoni with extra cheese. The address was in a quiet, upscale neighborhood I rarely delivered to. I remember thinking this will be fast. I pulled up to a sleek 2-story house with perfect landscaping. It looked like something straight out a magazine. I walked up to the door, box in hand, checking the receipt one last time. I knocked. The door opened and I froze. Standing there was a woman who looked like she belonged on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Maybe 40, maybe a bit younger. It was impossible to tell. She had long, soft waves of red hair that fell over her shoulders, green eyes that caught mine instantly, and an effortless elegance that made me forget how to speak for a moment. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater and dark jeans, nothing flashy, but she had a presence that made the air feel different. I cleared my throat and somehow managed, your pizza? She smiled a slow, knowing kind of smile, and took the box from me. Our fingers barely touched, but it felt like a spark. Then she tilted her head slightly, locked her eyes on mine, and said with a soft but confident tone, "If you're brave enough, stay." My heart practically stopped. My mind scrambled for what to do. Was she joking? Testing me? I had no idea. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, completely paralyzed. Everything about her said control. She wasn't awkward or nervous. She seemed to enjoy my obvious discomfort. I could feel my cheeks flush red hot. I laughed nervously, shook my head, and stammered, I should get going. More deliveries. She gave a little shrug, still smiling, as if she had expected that answer all along. "Suit yourself," she said warmly, and stepped back inside. The door closed quietly. I stood there for a second longer, heart racing, replaying the words in my head. "If you're brave enough, stay." I practically jogged back to my car, embarrassed at myself for acting so awkward. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a weird moment. Don't overthink it. The rest of my shift was a blur. I kept seeing her face every time I blinked. That smile, that voice. While I got home that night, I collapsed on the couch, still thinking about her. It was ridiculous. She was a customer, a stranger, older, completely out of my league. But no matter how much I tried to shake it, I couldn't. The memory of her stayed. The next few weeks were uneventful. Life went back to the same old routine. Classes, studying, late-night delivery shifts, and microwave dinners. I tried to push that strange, electrifying encounter out of my mind, but every so often, I'd find myself staring off into space, hearing her voice again. If you're brave enough, stay. I told myself it was just a weird fluke, some random customer with a quirky sense of humor. Nothing more. Besides, she was older, and way out of my league. I figured I'd never see her again one Saturday afternoon. The sun finally decided to show up after weeks of gray skies. I decided to take a walk through the park near campus to clear my head. It was a calm day, the air crisp, kids playing, couples walking their dogs, and the sound of distant laughter carried on the breeze. I had my earbuds in, shuffling through playlists when something made me pause. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. I froze. There she was, the woman, Claire. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew it was her. The same fiery red hair catching the sunlight, the same effortless way she walked, head held high but relaxed, as though she owned the ground beneath her feet. She wore a simple green jacket, fitted jeans, and a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. I panicked. I immediately looked away and pretended to be focused on my phone. I could feel my heart racing, or the odds. Portland wasn't huge, but it wasn't tiny either. I told myself to keep walking. Don't be weird, just go. But I couldn't. I kept glancing back. She noticed. Our eyes met. She smiled. Not the playful, teasing smile she gave me that night at the door, but a warm, genuine one. She started walking toward me, calm and deliberate. My pulse shot through the roof. I pulled out my earbuds, trying to act casual. "Hey," she said as she stopped a few feet in front of me. "You look familiar." I could barely get the words out. "I, delivered a pizza to you a few weeks ago." Her eyes lit up with recognition. "That's right, the shy delivery guy." I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. "Yeah, that was me." She laughed softly. It wasn't cruel or mocking, it was light and kind. "You never stayed." I shrugged awkwardly, looking anywhere but at her. "I wasn't sure you were serious." I was. Her voice was soft but confident. Then she tilted her head slightly and added, "Are you busy right now?" I blinked, startled. Not really." "Then walk with me." It wasn't a request. It was almost a command, but delivered in such a calm, inviting way that I couldn't imagine saying no. I fell in a step beside her as we slowly made our way down the path lined with towering pine trees and beds of tulips in full bloom. At first, the conversation was light. She asked me about school, my job, my plans after graduation. I learned that she worked in publishing, freelance editing mostly. She had moved to Portland a few years earlier after a divorce, looking for a fresh start. There was something about her that put me at ease. Despite the age gap, it never felt awkward. She was witty, smart, and had this way of listening that made me feel like my words actually mattered. At some point, I found myself laughing more than I had in weeks. She told me funny stories about the weird manuscripts she had to edit, and how some authors thought they were God's gift to literature. I told her about the disasters of working in food delivery, spilled sodas, wrong orders, bizarre customers. The more we walked, the less nervous I felt. After about an hour, we stopped near a small pond where ducks were swimming lazily. She turned toward me, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You're different from most guys I meet," she said thoughtfully. I felt my cheeks flush. "Is that a good thing?" She smiled again. That soft, knowing smile that somehow both comforted and disarmed me. "It's a very good thing. I like shy guys. It's cute." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't used to compliments, especially not from a woman like her. I stood there speechless, awkwardly kicking a small rock with my shoe. Claire reached in her bag, pulled out a small notepad, scribbled something quickly, and tore the page out. She handed it to me, her phone number. "I don't do this often," she admitted, "but something tells me you're worth the risk." I stared at the paper in my hand, stunned. Before I could say anything, she leaned in and kissed me lightly on the cheek. "I'll let you decide what happens next," she whispered. Then, with that same calm elegance, she walked away, leaving me frozen on the path, heart racing, watching her silhouette disappear into the trees. I stood there for a long time, staring at the number in disbelief. Part of me wanted to run after her. Another part of me was too shocked to move. Eventually, I walked home, dazed, the paper clutched tightly in my hand. I had no idea what I was going to do. The little slip of paper sat on my nightstand for days. I'd pick it up, stare at the number, then set it back down. I couldn't explain it. I wasn't scared of her, not exactly. I was scared of what that number meant, of what it could lead to. I had never been in anything close to what felt like an adult relationship. The girls I knew in college were casual, fleeting. Claire felt different. She was confident, elegant, mysterious. She made me feel like I mattered. For almost a week, I couldn't bring myself to call. I went about my days like a zombie, school, work, late-night delivery runs. But I kept thinking about her. The way she smiled, the way she listened, the gentle way she kissed my cheek. Finally, on a rainy Thursday night, I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. My thumb hovered over the screen for what felt like forever before I tapped call. It rang once, twice. My heart raced 3 times. I was about to hang up when I heard her voice. "Hello." For a second, I froze. "Oh, hey, it's me, Ethan, from the park and the delivery." A brief pause, then I heard a soft laugh, the kind that made my stomach twist in the best way. "I was beginning to think you lost my number." I let out a nervous breath. "I almost did. I'm glad you didn't." Her tone was warm, sincere. "How about dinner?" My throat tightened. "Like with you." "Yes, Ethan, with me. I promise I don't bite." I smiled, feeling my nerves melt just a little. We settled on a small Italian restaurant downtown the following night. I barely slept that night, running through every possible scenario. When Friday came, I stared at my reflection for nearly an hour before leaving. I had no idea what to wear. Everything felt either too casual or like I was trying way too hard. In the end, I settled for dark jeans, a button-up shirt, and my one decent jacket. I arrived early and stood awkwardly outside the restaurant, fidgeting with my phone. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. Then I saw her, Claire. She wore a simple black dress and a beige coat, her hair cast skating in soft curls over her shoulders. She walked toward me with that same calm grace I remembered, and my heart nearly stopped. "You clean up nicely," she teased as she approached. "You look incredible," I blurted without thinking. Her smile softened. "Thank you." The dinner was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Conversation flowed naturally. We talked about books, music, favorite movies. She told me about her travels, her love for old jazz records, and how she wanted to write a novel someday. I listened, captivated by every word. She had lived so much more life than I had. Yet she never made me feel small. At one point, I confessed, "I was nervous to call you." She tilted her head curiously. "Why?" "I didn't think you'd really want to see me again." Claire reached across the table and lightly touched my hand. "Ethan, I wouldn't have given you my number if I didn't want to see you again. The warmth of her touch sent a jolt through me. I smiled sheepishly. After dinner, we decided to walk. Downtown Portland at night was beautiful. The soft glow of neon signs, the gentle hum of cars passing by, couples walking hand in hand. We stopped by a small bookstore that was somehow still open, wandered through the aisles, and laughed at the ridiculous book titles we found. Time slipped away from us, and before I knew it, the streets were nearly empty. We stood under a flickering street lamp, the cold air causing my breath to cloud. Claire looked at me, her expression softening. "I don't want a night to end," she whispered. I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. My heart raced. "Come back to my place," she added, her voice low and inviting. "Just to talk, or whatever we feel like. Only if you're comfortable." I hesitated. The same nervous energy that had paralyzed me the first time rushed back. I stared into her eyes, searching for any sign of expectation or pressure. There was none, only warmth and openness. She smiled gently. "If you're brave enough, stay." The words hit me like a wave, the same words she'd said that first night. I nodded. "I'll stay." She slipped her hand into mine, and we walked off into the night together, my heart pounding but full of excitement, knowing something was beginning, even if I didn't know where it would lead. The walk to her place felt surreal. We didn't say much, but the silence wasn't awkward. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a sense that neither of us wanted to break the spell. Claire's fingers lightly brushed against mine as we walked, and eventually she slid her hand into mine. It felt so natural, so right, and yet my heart raced the whole way there. Her apartment was only a few blocks from where we had dinner, in a historic brick building with large windows and ivy climbing up the walls. We climbed the narrow staircase to the third floor, and she unlocked the door with a soft click. "Come in," she said with a warm smile. The inside of her apartment was exactly what I imagined: cozy, tasteful, filled with soft lamplight and the faint scent of vanilla. Books were everywhere, in neat stacks on tables, lined along the walls, even perched precariously on windowsills. There was a small record player in the corner with a crate of vinyls beside it. "Make yourself at home," Claire offered as she hung up her coat and kicked off her heels. She disappeared briefly into the kitchen. I stood there awkwardly for a moment, then wandered over to her bookshelf, running my fingers across the spines. When she returned, she handed me a cup of tea. "Chamomile," she said. "It helps with nerves." I smiled shyly as I accepted the cup. "You notice?" Claire laughed softly. I've been around long enough to tell. We sat on a couch, side by side, sipping tea and talking in low voices. The conversation drifted easily from favorite authors to childhood memories to silly, embarrassing moments. The warmth of the tea, the glow of the lamps, and the sound of soft jazz playing in the background made the whole night feel like we were in our own little world. At some point, the conversation slowed. Claire set her cup down, leaned back against the couch, and looked at me for a long, quiet moment. I felt her gaze, and for once, I didn't feel the urge to look away. "Do you know why I asked you to stay that night?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No, I still don't." She smiled faintly. "Because you're different. You're genuine. I was curious. I still am." Her hand reached out, brushing gently against my arm, sending shivers up my spine. I didn't know who leaned in first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was her. But the space between us disappeared, and our lips met in a soft, tentative kiss. It deepened slowly, naturally, as though we were both afraid to rush it. The world outside disappeared. I won't describe every detail. What happened between us stayed between us. But I can say it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't reckless or rushed. It wasn't purely physical. It was emotional, intimate, and meaningful in a way I hadn't thought possible. We weren't just two strangers acting on impulse. We were two people who had found each other at the exact right time, filling spaces neither of us knew were empty. Hours passed. The city outside went quiet, and the rain started to fall gently against the windows. I lay next to her, my head resting on the soft curve of her shoulder, listening to her breathing, feeling the rise and fall of her chest. Claire traced lazy circles on my arm with her fingertip and whispered, "You gave me something I thought I'd never feel again." I turned slightly so I could see her face in the dim light. "What's that?" She smiled, eyes half closed. "Hope." I didn't know what to say. I just lay there, letting her words sink into me, knowing I felt the same way. Eventually, the exhaustion of the night caught up to us. We fell asleep, wrapped up in each other's arms, as the rain lulled us into a peaceful, dreamless sleep. The morning sun crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I woke first, taking in the quiet beauty of the moment. Claire's face was relaxed, almost angelic in the soft light. I stayed like that for as long as I could, knowing this night, this feeling might never happen again. I didn't want to let go. Eventually, Claire stirred, opened her eyes, and smiled at me. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," I whispered back. We stayed like that, in silence, neither of us wanting to break the magic. Finally, Claire sat up and reached for her robe. "I'll make coffee," she said. I watched her move around the kitchen with practiced ease. The normalcy of it after the surreal night we'd shared grounded me. It felt real, but also fragile, as if it might vanish at any second. We drank our coffee together, barely speaking, exchanging soft smiles instead of words. I didn't want to ask what this meant or what would happen next. I just wanted to exist in that perfect, fleeting morning. Eventually, I glanced at the clock and realized I had to go. Claire walked me to the door. "I'm glad you stayed," she said quietly. I nodded, feeling an ache in my chest. I couldn't explain. "Me too." She leaned in and kissed me softly, lingering for just a second longer than necessary. Then she stepped back, hands still lightly touching my arm. "Call me," she asked. "Definitely," I whispered, as I walked down the stairs and out onto the quiet street. I couldn't stop smiling. I had no idea where this would go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. The next few days felt unreal. I floated through my classes and shifts at work with a quiet, giddy excitement. I had never felt anything like what I had with Claire. It wasn't just about what had happened that night. It was the connection, the comfort, the way she made me feel seen. I stare at my phone constantly, waiting for her name to pop up. I sent her a message the day after, just a simple, "I had an amazing time. Can't wait to see you again." No reply. I told myself not to panic. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she needed space. 2 days passed, then 4, then a week. I sent another message, this time a little more hesitant. "Hey, I hope everything's okay. Just thinking of you." Nothing. I tried calling. It rang until voicemail picked up. I didn't leave a message. I tried again the next day and the next. Every time, the same hollow tone, the same silence. The ache in my chest grew with each unanswered attempt. I replayed every moment of that night and the next morning in my mind, searching for something I might have done wrong. I couldn't find anything. Everything had felt right. After nearly 2 weeks of no contact, I decided I couldn't take the uncertainty any longer. I had the address. I would go to her apartment and just see. I told myself I wasn't being crazy, just needing closure. It was a chilly, overcast afternoon when I made my way back to her building. The same ivy still climbed the brick walls. The same creaky stairs led up to her door. I stood outside for a long time, my heart pounding, gathering the courage to knock. When I finally did, there was no answer. I knocked again and waited. Silence. I pressed my ear against the door. The apartment sounded empty. Confused and desperate, I walked back downstairs and approached the small office near the entrance, where the building manager usually sat. A middle-aged man with a clipboard and thick glasses looked up at me as I stepped in. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Ah, I'm looking for Claire." "Third floor, corner unit," I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice trembled slightly. The man frowned slightly, scanning his clipboard. "Claire? Oh, you mean Ms. Bennett?" "She moved out." I blink, stunned. "What? When?" He checked the papers. "About a week and a half ago. Left no forwarding address. Paid up, handed in her keys. That was it." I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. "Are you sure?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. The man gave me a small, sympathetic shrug. "Sorry, kid." I walked out in a daze. The streets felt colder, the sky duller. I stood across from the building for what felt like hours, just staring up at her now empty window. She was gone, just like that. No explanation, no goodbye. I would never know why. Was it something I did? Was she scared? Did she decide I was just a brief moment of excitement? Something that wasn't meant to last? I would never know. The following days were hard. I checked my phone obsessively, knowing it was pointless. I walked through the park where we had met, hoping I might see her by some impossible stroke of fate. She was never there. Eventually, I stopped looking. I forced myself to accept the reality. Claire had been a chapter in my life, not the whole story. It hurt more than I could ever explain. But I realized something. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. What we shared was real. It was brief, but real in some strange way. Claire had given me more in those few moments than anyone ever had. She taught me to take risks, to be brave, to believe that I was enough for someone. One late evening, as I walked home under the dim glow of the streetlights, I finally let go. I smiled softly to myself, thinking about her. Maybe some people aren't meant to stay. Maybe some people come into your life only to show you what's possible, to remind you that love, even if fleeting, exists. As I reached my apartment door, I looked up at the night sky and whispered quietly, "Thank you, Claire." I stepped inside, ready to keep going, knowing I'd carry that memory with me forever.